Why do you always yawn during deep conversations or moments of emotional truth, even when you're wide awake? Picture this. You're sitting in a room where the air is heavy with honesty. Someone, maybe a friend, maybe a therapist, is looking you in the eye and saying something they've never said out loud before. It's not boring, you're not tired, you're listening, fully, soul-level listening, and then, out of nowhere, your body betrays you. Your mouth opens, your jaw stretches, your eyes water. A yawn. Not a tiny one, but a full animal, head-tilting yawn. At first, you want to apologize. Maybe you do apologize. Sorry, I didn't sleep last night, you lie. But privately, you're thinking, why now? Why, in this moment, so awake, so alive, am I yawning? Is this just a trick of the body? Or does this simple, messy, open-mouthed act whisper something deeper about what we really experience in the presence of truth? I'll tell you a secret. The most profound yawn I ever had happened in the middle of a meditation circle. There were about 15 of us, seated in a rough circle, holding a field of quiet. The teacher had just asked us to close our eyes, breathe, and allow whatever needed to arise to emerge in the safety of the moment. I sat there, not thinking much, when suddenly a memory, one I hadn't touched in years, drifted up from somewhere inside me. It started as a pressure at the edges, a tingling at the base of my skull. My heart thumped, and before I could push the feeling down, I yawned. The kind of yawn that starts deep, opens your chest, waters your eyes, and seems to last a strangely long time. It was so big, so loud. A few people opened their eyes and chuckled. Normally, I would have felt embarrassed, but not this time. Because in the wake of that yawn, something released. I could feel it. A tension inside had unknotted. It was as if the yawn had carried out some hidden, unspoken weight. That's the thing about yawning. It sneaks up not just when you're tired or bored, but often right at the moment when you're about to break through something, whether it's a memory, a feeling, or a long-trapped piece of your own truth. It happens in therapy, in deep conversation, even in prayer or spiritual ritual. Somewhere, your body seems to know, now is the moment to let go. Now is the moment to make space, for breath, for relief, for something new. You could call it the gateway act of the soul, this ordinary animal gesture that for just a split second makes you defenseless, wide open, gulping air. It's an involuntary act, yes, but sometimes I wonder if there's more intention in a yawn than in half the words we say. So here's a question to sit with. What if your yawn is not just a call for oxygen, but a signal, a nudge from your deeper self that says, something is moving, shifting, clearing out? What if it's the soul's little exhale in the middle of a moment that matters? Let's slip for a moment beneath the skin, into that curious space between science and something subtler. On paper, a yawn is nothing mystical. Your brain, ever alert to its own needs, notices the blood's oxygen or CO2 balance is off kilter, or maybe senses things heating up within the skull, so it triggers the ancient reflex. Open the mouth, gulp the air, cool the brain, reset the system. That's the physiological version, the vagus nerve, the cascade of neurotransmitters, the way the act of stretching your jaw can gently flip the body into parasympathetic mode, the mode that soothes, digests, recalibrates. If you look at an fMRI scan, you'll see a yawn lights up the ancient reptilian corridors of the brain, the liminal territory where old survival circuits fire and fade away. There's nothing to spiritualize about a survival circuit, right? Just a body doing what it's made to do. Except, have you ever noticed how mechanical explanations fall a little flat in the heat of real experience? Scientists have tried for years to pin yawning down. Maybe it's contagious because of mirror neurons, or a display of social synchronization, or a means to alert the group to tiredness. All logical, all true. But still, none of this quite explains why you yawn most intensely during therapy sessions. emotional breakthroughs, or right after someone says what no one else ever dared to say. Maybe you're in an energy healing session, lying with eyes closed, drifting between waking and dream, and suddenly you yawn again and again and again. Sometimes a healer will pause and smile. Good sign, they might say, as if your body is a Morse code transmitter, pulsing out signals in slow blinks and open-mouthed gestures. Spiritual teachers, those who work closely with subtle energy, have a particular respect for the therapeutic yawn. In shamanic cultures, in Reiki, even among certain psychotherapists, yawning isn't dismissed as distraction. It's seen as a sign that energy is moving, that something you were holding, breath, emotion, psychic residue, is finally being allowed a passage. It's curious, too, how yawning shows up in spiritual ceremonies, sweat lodge rituals, deep breath work, the liminal minutes before and after a group meditation. You'll see people around the circle tipping their heads back, jaws stretching wide, eyelids fluttering. You can feel it then, the way a yawn seems to gather up old air, old energy, and push it out with a hint of delicious relief. The body makes room for new breath, new clarity. And so, the question lingers, is yawning simply biology? Or is it sometimes the language of the soul, raw, inarticulate, but real? By the way, if this is opening something in you right now, I have something for you. My free ebook, The Magic of Affirmations, is designed to deepen your connection with your energy field and the subconscious signals it's always sending. You'll find the link in the description. If you look to the old stories, because let's be honest, our ancestors watched their own yawns with more wonder than analysis. You'll find a gallery of meanings blooming around the act. The Greeks, for instance, believed the soul and breath were siblings, intertwined through the act of inspiration, breathing in. The word psyche itself means both breath and soul, and for some philosophers, a yawn was an opening through which spirit and new consciousness could enter. The moment your jaw unhinged, so too did the barrier between you and something beyond. In West African tradition, yawning has long held its own mysterious power. Some elders say that when a person yawns, they're discharging spiritual energy. It's not just tiredness, they say, it's an adjustment, a balancing of invisible forces. Some tell children to cover their mouths, not to be polite, but to keep the soul from slipping out too easily, or to avoid inviting in mischievous spirits drifting on the air. The yawn becomes a portal moment, a temporary suspension of boundaries where old energy can slip away and new vitality can pour in. Taoist practices are equally reverent. There's a belief that yawning is a purification, an automatic clearing of stagnant qi, the vital life force that runs through all things. In some meditation schools, yawning is welcomed. Students are told not to suppress the urge, but to let it flood them, to trust that the movement signals a release of blockages, a way the body and spirit coordinate to push out what's no longer needed. New Age thought has its own take, seeing each yawn as a biofeedback loop, an indicator that the subconscious mind is finally, if briefly, relaxing its grip. If you're in a healing session and the healer yawns, don't be surprised. Energetically sensitive people will often yawn for you, transmuting dense or stuck emotions on your behalf, their bodies so finely tuned to energetic tides that they become like windmills, spinning the stagnant air of a room into fresh movement. The thread that winds through all of this, the breath, the soul's oldest language. What is a yawn, after all? But a wave of new oxygen rolling in, filling the lungs, blooming through the bloodstream, lifting the fog from ancient corners of the brain. In every sacred tradition, breath is the gateway, the first thing you do when you're born, the last thing you do before you die. Between these two breaths, thousands of yawns, each one a little rehearsal or reminder, as if the body needs to keep practicing, opening up, letting go. You might think of the yawn as the soul's exclamation point, a punctuation mark at the end of an invisible sentence. You enter a room thick with unspoken truths. Someone finally names the thing that's been simmering beneath the surface. Shame, grief, hope, fear. Right then, a yawn ripples out. There it is. Your hidden self, gasping for communion, validating the courage of whatever was released into the circle. Some people talk about soul retrieval work, a shamanic practice where pieces of the soul scattered by trauma are called home. During these ceremonies, yawning is common, a sign that the body-soul system is recalibrating. The breath running deep, the jaw stretching wide, the thin thread of awareness suspended in the in-between. These are the liminal moments when old pain or long-dormant energy finds its way out, making space for something lighter, cleaner. If you close your eyes and let yourself remember, you'll probably notice that certain conversations, certain moments of revelation, always make you yawn. I'm not tired, you think, but the act is unstoppable. The preacher and the poet might call it a sign that your spirit has just been touched, a gust of soul wind stirring up the dust in the corners of your being, requiring you to shake loose what no longer serves. It's humbling, too, that yawning is so contagious, a tiny, unconscious miracle proving we're networks of resonant energy first, individuals second. Every time you watch someone yawn and feel the impulse whip through your own jaw, it's as if your body is saying, I bear witness, I am tuning in on a biological, yes, but also on a spirit level. If this all sounds a little out there, look around. Children yawn when they sense tension. Dogs yawn after being scolded or when they encounter strong emotions in their humans. Even ancient statues, if you look close, sometimes carry the echo of a yawn carved into their open mouths. A frozen moment of animal vulnerability made sacred by time. In your own life, maybe there's a story about a yawn that carried more meaning than it should have. Let's wander into those a bit. There's a woman I once met at a retreat, let's call her May, whose yawns were legendary. She was slender, with eyes set deep behind glasses, carrying the air of someone who thought carefully before choosing each word. During group meditations, people would giggle afterward, May, you yawned so loudly. She would just smile, sometimes embarrassed, mostly matter of fact. But in a circle devoted to shadow work, where participants revealed the emotional debris they'd spent lifetimes hiding, May's yawning reached epic proportions. Every round, as someone dredged up shame or anger, she would tip back her head and yawn so powerfully it almost seemed performative. After several such sessions, her voice soft, she explained, I think I'm clearing energy, not just for me, but for the group. It happens whenever I touch a memory that scared me, or when someone else is willing to share what I didn't dare say. In those weeks, she found herself crying less, breathing more, dreaming more vividly. It was as if the yawns, a river of them, had washed old residue out of her nervous system. There's another story, more private but universally familiar. A man I know, let's call him Ethan, spent years avoiding one conversation with his family. He knew that talking about certain childhood events would bring up pain, resentment, confusion, maybe even confrontation. And yet, one evening at dinner, his sister brought up the subject. There was no accusation, just gentle curiosity. What do you remember? And in that moment, without warning, almost before a word had been said, Ethan yawned. He tried to hide it, smiled sheepishly, but it happened again and again, his body rippling with involuntary openings. Maybe you're bored, his sister teased, but she saw it in his eyes. Something was stirring. Later, as he reflected, he realized the yawns showed up every time he felt the urge to flee. Every moment the conversation bent toward truth. The body, wise in ways language never is, couldn't lie or divert. It simply opened, exhaled, released. Then there was Julia, the pragmatic sort, fiercely logical. For her, the language of energy or spiritual clearing sounded suspect, a little too poetic for her taste. But when she lost her father, grief took up residence in her chest, a heaviness she couldn't shift with words or reason. She tried therapy, journaling, even running. Nothing helped. But during one support group, when the facilitator invited participants to name what they hadn't been able to cry for, she found herself yawning. Not once, but many times, her mouth stretching, her lungs heaving with strangely satisfying air. Afterwards, the heaviness was a little lighter. Something had moved. She couldn't explain it, didn't want to romanticize it, but the fact remained. Her grief had found a way out, not as tears, but as yawns. Quiet, persistent, oddly rejuvenating. Can you see somewhere between these stories how yawns mark transition? Not just from sleep to wakefulness, but from contraction to opening, from secret to shared, from denial to acknowledgement. The most remarkable thing is how universal it is. Children, animals, the dying, the grieving, all yawn in the midst of intense feeling. Even those who doubt anything spiritual often notice. The biggest yawns sometimes come when the truth is finally allowed to whisper through. Let's try something together. The next time you feel a yawn rising, whether it's in the soft hush of meditation, the edge of a difficult conversation, or the strange nowhere land between boredom and inspiration, pause. Just for a heartbeat, pause. Instead of trying to stifle it or offer some sheepish apology, let yourself notice. What emotion just moved? What memory or story or truth slipped through your body's fabric, asking for breath, for space, for release? Try this gently. As the yawn begins, close your eyes. Feel the way it builds, a sort of bubbling at the chest, a pressure at the edge of the jaw, a softening at the core. Breathe into it, deep and slow. Notice if your eyes water, if your shoulders drop, if your heart feels lighter. Maybe the yawn is carrying out a heaviness or just allowing you to refill with presence. As you exhale, ask yourself, what did I just let go of? If nothing comes to mind, that's okay. Sometimes yawns are subtle, almost anonymous, tiny releases with no name. Afterward, if you're a journaler, jot down a note. Yawned 3 times after talking about my old job. Yawned as my friend confessed her fears. Yawned in meditation when I reached the place I usually avoid. Track the pattern, gently. Over time, you might notice that your yawns aren't random at all. They sync up with certain themes, certain truths, certain unburdenings. And if you want to get quietly poetic with yourself, imagine each yawn is a feather duster sweeping the shelves of your psyche, or a gust blowing open the dusty windows of the soul. Feel the way yawning undoes you, just for a second. The jaw unfastened, the eyes squeezed, the throat wide as a cave. There's vulnerability here, and also soft power. You're opening, without knowing why or how, making space for breath to find its own way through. Some evenings, try a little exercise. Before bed, lie down, close your eyes, and breathe slowly. If you feel a yawn building, allow it to come. Track what's happening, not with judgment or analysis, but with warm, curious attention. Ask, am I bored? Am I relieving tension? Or is there something inside me, some story or feeling being carried out with this breath? See if you can bless each yawn, sending it off with gratitude. Thank you for clearing what I could not name. Over days or weeks, you might find there are hours when yawns are frequent, after a hard conversation, in the middle of creative work, at the end of a long walk, when you're finally alone. Try to honor the rhythm. If you notice yawning during tense moments, let it become a cue to check in. Is there pain I need to face? Is there relief I've denied myself? Is something shifting, recalibrating? Let the breath itself be your answer. If a friend or partner yawns in a moment of intimacy or revelation, resist the urge to read boredom into it. Maybe their body is answering a call your words have only just begun to voice. Maybe something in them needed space, acknowledgement, release. All of this is a way of saying, treat your yawns as teachers. Let them guide you, mark the passages of emotion, energy, and truth in your days. Trust that your body knows its own way to healing, even when your conscious mind is slow to catch up. There's something called the mirror principle at play here, a sort of secret law of the body and spirit, whispering, "Your body knows before your mind does." Think about it. So many of your physical reactions bloom before thought. The yawn, in particular, is a signal from the depths. Before you know you're about to cry, you might yawn. Before you admit you're anxious, you find yourself gulping for air. Before your conscious mind admits anything, your body has already opened the door. Mirrors don't just reflect your face, they reflect your energy, your state of flow, your buried feelings. A yawn is like the body's mirror, flipping up a card from the deck of your unconscious, showing you what you're really processing even if you prefer to look away. When energy starts shifting, maybe after a truth is spoken, or a tension is broken, or a heartbreak is remembered, the yawn arrives. Not as a sign of weakness, but as evidence of alignment. Energy moves, tension is released, the body's field realigns, and a vacuum is created. The yawn rushes in to fill that space, to anchor the new balance, to give shape to the transformation. That's why, after deep healing work, people often report feeling lighter, brighter, as if a fog is lifted, even when no tears were shed, and the only visible sign was a series of huge, embarrassing yawns. We overlook these signposts. Imagine, how would your life shift if you greeted each yawn as a message, a little pulse of wisdom from your unconscious, signaling, change is here, alignment is arriving, what was hidden is being released. In a sense, the yawn is the bridge between what you know and what you don't yet understand. This is why sensitive people may find themselves yawning when others confess their emotions, or when the air in the room shifts. They're picking up on currents beneath the surface, unspoken words, unprocessed feelings, the hum of tension that hasn't found its voice. The yawn is both a response and a relief valve, a way the empathic body modulates, soothes, rebalances itself, and sometimes the collective field. You can think of yawning as your internal barometer, free, ever-present, impossible to ignore. When you notice yourself yawning at strange times, try to become curious instead of annoyed. Ask yourself, what is my body mirroring right now? Whose emotion? What memory? What tension? What truth? Sometimes you'll find that the answer surfaces a moment, an hour, or a day later. The body, patient as always, gets there first. So the next time you yawn, in a moment that feels charged or sacred or strange, don't ignore it. You might be exhaling a part of you that's finally ready to leave. You might be clearing the air inside you, making space for something fresher and truer to land. You might be tuning into someone else's energy, bridging the mysterious space between knowing and not knowing. And if you're up for it, I'd love to hear your story. Tell me, when was the last time a yawn surprised you? What truth, spoken or silent, stirred inside your open mouth? If you want to sink even deeper into these subtle mysteries, the language of your breath, your energy, the secret codes your body is sending, I invite you to download The Magic of Affirmations, my free ebook. Let it carry you into an even fuller conversation with your own soul. The link's in the description, waiting for you. And trust, every sign your body gives you, no matter how ordinary, is an invitation to deeper awareness. Maybe start tonight, and next time we'll talk about the other wild, wise ways your body speaks when your mind's not looking. Sacred signals, intuitive awakenings, whatever shape your path takes, the mystery is already inside you, waiting to be exhaled.